I can see like there are a lot of great questions that have been asked in the question and answer tab, right? So let's quickly take them up. So, okay, the main question will be, hi, Dr. Kaur. Okay, this is for Dr. Kaur. As you mentioned about consent from customer should be there, but what about personal data already being shared with hundreds of companies by different agencies? How is this act going to handle that?
Okay. So as of now, the act only states that the act enactment date is 11th August. As of now, it only states that before the information collected till 11th August 2023, a prior notice is to be sent. So since this act is evolving, we haven't have any safeguarding measures since the enactment date is also not there. It's just the implementation date, but it says that all those data fiduciaries need to provide a notice for which purpose they are using the data. So if you see now that most of the companies have started hashing or masking the numbers or the email IDs, they've started doing it. But as of now, the only recurse is that you would be sent a notice of all the ways they are using their data. And since it has not been enacted, so hold tight till we get an enactment date.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Next question is, how does the act help in safeguarding the personal data that is already circulating with various agencies? Jijy, would you like to take this up?
Yeah, I think, yeah. So of course, as a country, we have not been so much conscious of information use, right? So I mean, we have a lot of businesses have been emerged in the last few years, leveraging data. So it is definitely going to be, implementation is definitely going to be very challenging task.
Humongous task, yeah.
Very, very huge task for certain businesses. It may become cost challenging also because people have made business models around the data, right? So it is definitely not going to be an easy task. Having said that, it is always good to start taking consent, at least from now, if you have not started it. So that is for the data that you're going to collect henceforth. For the past data, I think Dr. Raghuir has said, right, you should actually take it's always better to take a consent retrospectively, right? If not consent, at least inform that we are holding this information. If you have any, if you have any concern, come back, right? So at least, of course, a lot more clarity will emerge as the act become more implementable. More and more organizations will, come forward and start implementing the provisions of the law. Of course, it's always good to do an impact assessment, and there are specialized agencies who help do that. At least in my information, the Big Fours do that, and many agencies who have actually helped organizations comply with the GDPR and several other laws, right? So they have the expertise in helping the organizations do that. So it's always better to do an impact and assessment, take a complete inventory of where all you collect information, what kind of information you have, catalog it properly, and then have a structured approach. I mean, nothing can happen overnight, and this the lawmakers also know that it's not going to be that easy, and they have given sufficient time. Of course, the dates and timelines have not yet been released, but to my mind, at least the organization should start making some changes in the journey from now. And of course, over a period of time, the processes and practice and tools, everything will evolve. And for us to reach a state of maturity for the compliance, maybe it will be a 2-3 years journey, but that journey must begin from now, right?
And just to add to that point, Nisha, so while we are so much concerned about what is going to happen, just think about few of the steps that you as an individual can take. So if you happen to remember, now when you go to a site, it pops up a cookie banner, right? So this is not just a chance. CNIL, a French body, made it mandatory that, and in the haste of just getting into the website, we allow all cookies. So you yourself are not being vigilant, sharing abundance of your information. just make it a habit of allowing any functional cookie that will restrict a lot of your data being stored. So this is one short of example. So while you are worrying that the act can help to curtail data at an individual level, try not to share more than required.
Yeah. Great point. We have another question asked by Amit. How to set up a data protection officer in organization within company for DPDP compliance?
Yes, so I can pick it up.
Yes.
See, first of all, the large fiduciaries, right? As per the provisions of the law, needs to have a data protection officer, and this data protection officer is going to be the highest level of authority in the organization, who need to, or who's responsible actually for delivering the compliances, right? So, and of course, at the government level also, there is a board that's going to come up. And there are going to be more detailed compliance reporting standards that we may find coming up, like you have the RBI for banking and financial services, you have IRDA, you have SEBI. So like that, this compliance entity will also enforce the law through various different compliance guidelines, right? And I'm also assuming that this law will be pushed through various other regulatory bodies as well. Say, for example, the banks and financial the lending companies are governed by RBI, right? Similarly, IRDA does it for insurance, telecom. The TRI is the regulator for telecom. So I think what is going to happen eventually once this data protection board, comes in, will be tightening the policies and guidelines and processes through various different regulatory bodies, and that will ensure that there is a closer monitoring of the compliances on the ground. So literally, the way in which you do compliance reporting for your core business function, eventually over a period of time, this is also going to happen for the data protection as well. And the data protection officer is going to be that individual who has to evangelize data protection in the organization, who needs to ensure compliance, of the various guidelines in the act, right?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jijy. There's one last question in the Q&A box, right? This is asked by Purvika. Who will be responsible for data leakage in a company that the HR department has access to? How can this case be handled?
So for any form of data leakage that happens, the entire senior management is basically responsible. Fine. But if we go for the other established bodies, let's say GDPR, so the senior management would be reporting it to the body. And it then decides whether the parties who are involved should be informed about that or not. But the process is clubbed between the data protection officer and the senior management. So the importance of DPO comes here because he's somebody who's not working under various levels of management, but is reporting directly to the senior management. So either the senior management or the data protection officer of the organization would be informing about the breach. So here, the HR would be a micro unit, and that would not be working. It would be reporting to its macro unit, that is the senior management, and that is the process how it gets to reported. So DPB, Data Protection Board, would be set up, and that would be informed. And it's still not defined the period, but in general, GDPR says 72 hours is the time in which you need to inform of any breach, and immediately before informing, you have to start taking the contingent measure of this breach that has happened. I hope that answers.
Yes, it really does.
And maybe I can add
yeah.
1 or 2 points, if I may,
Please go ahead.
Nisha,
Yes.
to Raghuvir's point. See, each industry has its own dynamics of the compliance and reporting architecture. So when it comes to financial services companies, like in our scenario, or any bank, you have different layers of the organization. One is your functional layer, and then you have a risk layer, which is on top of the functional layer. Then third layer, you have the audit layer, and then fourth layer is your board committee, which is the audit committee, and then the fifth layer is a board. So I'm sure each, whether it's a healthcare company or a telecom company or each IT company, each of them have their own layers of governances within the organizations. So when it comes to compliance, as I mentioned, right, this will eventually get pushed through the regulatory bodies as well. Then what's going to happen is that the compliances need to be regularly reported to the risk, and risk has to, one side keep highlighting if there is any open risk on the compliances front. On the other hand, the audit will keep auditing and reporting the gaps to the audit committee, which is under the board, and it gets to the board. So basically, and ultimately to the regulator, right? So I think there will definitely be, as a good practice, good governance, even if this doesn't come as an explicit ask from the from the lawmakers. We should definitely bring in this whole compliance of this particular law also into the net of the organization's governance ecosystem, to have the right level of compliance. Because the kind of penalties that they have put forward is humongous, right? I mean, a company which can't even think of paying a 200 crores or 250 crores of, I mean, companies who don't even have that kind of revenue, may become suddenly liable to pay that kind of a penalty. I don't think it is possible for any organization to ignore this particular law, right? So it's always better that proactively, whether it's HR function or various functions, right, who are responsible for the data, it is always better to bring it under the governance structure of the organizations forcefully, to make sure that there are no and there is adequate monitoring and supervision and reporting.
All right. Great points, Raghuveer and Jijy. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the insights that you've shared with us today and for taking your time out.